Hi, good everybody. It's Rob again. This time, in the next video installment, I'm going to have a look at the advanced actions specific to the Costa, the green faction in the game, a faction which emphasizes commerce, profit, buildings, and general commercial development in the city of Staines. So we're going to go immediately into Tabletop Simulator. And what I've got laid out are the 10 cards, 10 action cards containing the secondary actions available to the coster. Immediately, you will note they don't have much in the way of costs in the spaces in the top left and right. Uh, Only two of the cards, in fact, have any cost whatsoever, and both of them have a monetary cost. But let's start at the top left with bridge tax. There are fairly significant requirements for the playing of this card. There needs to be 8 influence in the city for the caster before it can be played, 8 or more. The specific leader, known as Cargo Sloker, he needs to be active and level 2. There also needs to be at least one commercial building in play. And finally, the caster needs to have at least one treasure on its faction board before this card can be played. The effect of this card is to cause other factions to pay money to the coster on a basis of 1 coin for every flag of their color that exists in quarters that have an arrow which is partially blue. You'll remember that certain of the double-sided arrows indicating adjacency have a blue side to indicate that those quarters are only adjacent in the event that the bridge is operative. Well, any quarters that share a blue arrow, uh, any flags in those quarters, excuse me, the faction whose color they are will have to pay coins equal to the number of flags in those factions to the coster. So this can be a fairly lucrative card for the coster to play, depending on the extent to which other factions have developed or put up buildings in those areas. The secondary effect of this card is to place a discontent token, and importantly, this card also is a uh, Royal Council card, so it can be played when the requirements are not met if you have strength and or support in the Royal Council. That's bridge tax, an important card. Something to remember is that there is an event in the event deck known as floods, which if it comes out, will remove this card permanently from the game. So this card is powerful if other people have built lots of buildings, uh, but may be removed in the event of floods. The next card I want to talk about is building plans. Building plans has a variable cost. The cost is 1 coin for every 2 Costa influence flags in the city. So this is a card that gets more expensive to play the more of your own building flags you have placed on the city of Staines. So uh, at the beginning of the game, when you only have 2 green flags because of your opening building, this card will merely cost 1 coin to play. But as that number increases, it will increase by 1 coin for every 2 flags. The requirements are that the Burgermeister must be active and he must be at least level 2, and you must have at least 10 coins in your own supply. If you do, and if you meet those requirements, then the effect of the card is that you draw 2 building cards from the top of the building card deck. You look at those cards and you may force another faction to buy one of those cards for 5 coins. They have to pay you the 5 coins, or they may lose influence if they don't have enough. And you have to give them the card that you offer them for sale. The requirement is that the card must contain a flag in the color of that particular player or that particular faction. So while it's a quick way of making money, it does place potentially useful building cards into the hands of other players. Its secondary effect is to add one influence anywhere, which is obviously a useful one. The notorious cab drivers is the next card. Notorious because it can have ongoing effects which can be lucrative for you, but particularly onerous for other players in the game. There are no costs to play this card, but the leader known as Jack Mallojack must be in play, and he must be at least level 2. And also, there must be 2 or more commercial buildings in play. Now, there will be one, at least, from your starting building, and there may be more than one if, for example, the guild is in play because they also begin with a commercial building. But 2 are required before you can play this card. And this card has an ongoing effect for the whole round. Like any card that has an ongoing effect that lasts the round, it's more effective if played early in the round. The symbol of the hourglass slash lantern is an indicator of an ongoing effect throughout the game. But in the case of a card, it only lasts so long as the round continues. And in this case, while this card is in play, all leaders may move twice. In other words, they can move one as they would normally, or potentially they could move 2 spaces, or you could move 2 leaders 1 space. But in order to do so, whenever you move, or whenever another faction moves, they have to pay you either 1 or 2 coins. 1 coin if they only took 1 move, and 2 coins if they took 2 moves. So what this card is doing is offering an extended movement option to all other factions, but at a cost which gets paid to you as the coster. The secondary effect of this card is that you may also add an additional movement of one of your leaders, and this card is a Royal Council card, so it can potentially be played without the requirements. That's cab drivers. Moving on to stowaway. This card requires cargo sloker to be active and for there to be at least 1 building in the waterfront quarter. Those are the requirements in the left-hand column. If those requirements are met, you can play the card, but the card requires a dice roll as indicated, and it allows you to remove a leader from exile or jail and return them to their faction board. If you do, you add 3 influence wherever you wish in the city. To do so, of course, you do need to make a dice roll, and the required dice total is always 6 in order to succeed. If you do succeed, then and only then can you take the secondary action, which is to gain 5 coins. So a potentially lucrative card, both from influence and a coin perspective, provided you can make the dice roll. Talking of lucrative, moving on to Gambling Ring. This card requires only that a specific leader, in this case Ricard Andolia, be active and that you have at least 1 treasure on your faction board. If you meet those requirements, you can play the card, and the card simply requires you to roll a 10-sided die. You subtract 2 from that total, and you gain the result in coins. If the result is negative, then you have to pay in that number of coins. That 10-sided die is not modified by any leader level, so it is literally a bit of a gamble, hence the name of the card. If you do play the card and you do take the gamble, then you get to add 1 influence as a secondary action. And Gambling Ring is also a Royal Council card, so could potentially be played without the requirements. Moving on to Bad Grain, the Leader that is required to be active for this card is known as public and brunt. There must also be a commercial building, either in Northcatch or Louston, as the two quarters that are indicated by their symbols. If so, then you can take the main effect of the card, which is that all leaders of other factions in quarters connected to a blue arrow. Once again, the blue arrow becomes relevant. These are quarters connected to the river that splits the city of Staines. All leaders in those quarters gain a malady token. So this is a way of putting a lot of malady tokens onto leaders very quickly. Um, and if leaders already have malady tokens, this can be fairly devastating. The secondary effect is to place a rat anywhere in the city. Um, you choose into which quarter you place the rat. Then an unusual card, Overturned Cart, requires the leader Odo the Boot to be active. He must be level 2. Also requires at least 6 of your influence on the board. There are two possible ways to use this card, and they are alternatives to each other. Uh, Firstly, you can remove a voting token from another faction in the Royal Council. You simply remove it from the board, meaning that faction would have one less vote going forward. Or you can permanently remove this card from the game. In other words, a once-off usage in order to remove a card already played by another faction this round. So a card played by another faction can essentially be taken out of the game for good. So this is an extremely powerful effect, and one which shouldn't be used sparingly because it removes this card permanently from the game. The strategy behind this card I'll discuss in another video, but for present purposes, that is what it does. Its secondary effect is to place a rat anywhere in the city, and you decide where that goes. Then we have credit. Uh, a tricky card to play. Uh, the requirements are reasonably high in that there must be 8 influence on the board, and Jack Malajack must be at least level 2. The effect is to remove your own influence from a quarter up to the combined total of leader levels you have there. So in other words, you tally up the number of leader levels you have in that quarter, and that determines the maximum number of influence you can remove from that quarter. In exchange for that removal, you then gain coins equal to 2 times that number. So by way of example, if you had a level 2 and a level 1 leader in a quarter, you could remove 3 of your own influence from that quarter and get back 6 coins in exchange. So this is a card useful when you are not worrying too much about influence, but are trying to get your number of coins up quickly. The secondary effect is to convert 1 influence anywhere in the city, which is also useful. And of course, it is a Royal Council card, so it could theoretically be paid when the requirements are not met. Second and last penultimate card is Progress. This is the only other card other than building plans that requires a coin cost to play. In this case, 2 coins must be paid. The requirements are fairly high in that the Burgermeister must be active and must be level 3. What's more, there should be more commercial buildings than administrative and religious buildings for this card to be played. So, by way of example, if there were 1 each of a administrative and 1 religious building in play, but there were 2 commercial buildings in play, that would qualify as meeting the requirements. It's not the total of administrative and religious buildings that it has to beat. It's simply it has to be higher than both individually. So if you have more commercial buildings, and there are more commercial in the game than there are administrative or religious, then you can activate and play this card. And this allows you to add 3 influence anywhere, which is a powerful effect. The secondary effect is also powerful in that you must place a ruin token in any quarter of your choice. Now, ruin tokens have several effects, one of which is to cause the guild faction to gain influence in that quarter every round. So it is a bit of a double-edged sword in that it's a card that allows you to add influence immediately, but potentially give the guild an option to accrue influence as the game continues. Lastly, we have Arms Dealer. By way of this card, you profit from other factions engaging in contests. So this is another card with an ongoing effect, so best played early in the round. The requirements here are that either Odo the Boot or Cargo Sloker must be active and level 2. And when you play this card, uh, for the remainder of the round, any faction can pay you money to improve their chances in a contest. They can pay you from 1 to 5 coins to gain the commensurate bonus to any contest in the round. Uh, so it only applies to one contest, and each payment applies to an individual contest. So if a faction wished to benefit a second time in the same round from the use of Arms Dealer, they would have to pay you again. Um, it's a way of which you make money, and one or other faction can profit in the contest. Secondary effect is to place a discontent token anywhere in the city. And Arms Dealer also is a Royal Council card, meaning you could potentially get the council to agree to vote for this card to be played without the requirements being met. Right, that's it for the Costas cards. I hope that gives you good insight into the Costas secondary or advanced actions and abilities and what you can expect to see on your cards as they come up when you're playing the Costa faction. I look forward to seeing you on the next video in which I will deal with the other side of the commercial coin, as it were, when I deal with the guild. Thanks for watching and enjoy, and I'll see you on the next one.